Edith, obviously this is a dramatic morning, and we have to discuss the elephant in the room, excuse the pun, because elephant is the symbol of the Republicans also. I think regardless of political opinion, this is a stunning surprise. And I know it's very early, but I want to ask you, what will a Trump presidency mean for privacy, for the privacy profession, for the agency, and if you want, for Washington, D.C.?
It's a big question, Omer. Let me just start, though, by thanking IAPP and you for the invitation to be here. I really am delighted, although I confess that it seems a bit odd for me to be here in Brussels and not to be in the US today, of all days. Yes, there has unquestionably been a stunning and unexpected outcome in the election in the United States. That being said, I believe that the issues that we're discussing today about privacy and data security are ones that are of monumental importance. And with any change in administration, there are always going to be, of course, shifts and different approaches taken, but I believe that there will be a continued emphasis placed on these very important issues. I certainly know from our work at the FTC that these are issues that are of significant importance to the American people, and as a consequence, I think that will continue to be, there will be continued effort to focus on the protection of privacy and investment in cybersecurity and attending to the privacy implications and security implications of emerging technologies. I can certainly speak much more reliably, of course, with respect to the FTC in particular. And the Federal Trade Commission is an independent, bipartisan agency. And I can tell you that historically, there have been less of a swing across administrations when it comes to the agency priorities. And there is no question in my mind that even in the face of a change of leadership, which will certainly occur at the agency, these issues will continue to be important. For the FTC, I think we will continue to be focused on enforcement, on significant policy work and research that the agency is engaging in. I think that will continue, and of course also a focus on the importance of educating consumers and educating businesses. So I am confident that regardless of any change in leadership, those priorities will continue. Equally important, of course, will also be, I believe, the enforcement of the Privacy Shield program.
Great. So, Isabel, I want to hear your thoughts about the same topic. As Giovanni said in his keynote address, really a staggering change over a short period of time. Brexit, the Trump election, French elections are coming up in a couple of months. What's next for privacy?
Well, I would have three reactions towards at least the US election. And probably one of the remarks is common between the Brexit and this presidential election. I think first, it shows that we have to listen to the peoples. And in all these countries, peoples have expressed something. And so I think it's a very strong political message to the politicians. And probably in France, we should realize what could be the consequences. Second, I would say that it makes me feel that all the polls and all the algorithms, that are presented as key levy to all types of problems should be taken with cautiousness, because obviously the figures are not so simple, and you just can't rely only on a device, on an algorithm to have the results. I mean, human nature is a little bit more complex. And third, and I would echo to what Edith just said. More technically, we have developed with the United States a very good relationship as regards international data flows. And we have very close contacts with the Department of Commerce, with the FTC, with the ODNI, and I hope this very good relationship is going to be pursued. And I'm quite happy to what Edith just said, because I think this is something of great value, the relationship we have developed between our two countries on privacy. This is a common subject we had together. And so I hope the new administration is going to carry along the same lines.
Great, Giovanni, I'm eager to hear your thoughts about the same issue, but picking off on something that Isabel just said, the whole premise of big data analysis, and I know there is a project that EDPS is working on, data ethics, trying to frame the ethical context for big data. The whole premise is that we collect a lot of data, we look at it, the machines kind of churn through it, and we draw lessons about individual preferences and thoughts and behaviors. And yet here we've seen over the past year, poll after poll, all over the US and in each of the 50 states, get absolutely wrong, the choice between just two alternatives. What does this mean for big data analysis?
Oh, good question, but I cannot say business as usual because, of course, this long night will have an impact. But who knows? We see at distance that the elected president is considered by someone as partly unpredictable. So it could be that he will surprise us with something positive in terms of data protection. I see a trend internationally in terms of, cooperation, mutual recognition, synergies. I think it would be difficult to opposed to this trend. Big data has only a future if we will invest a lot of efforts in terms of big data protection, if we allow people to be in control. So transparency first and new effective ways to make existing principles more effective in practice. I think this is the challenge. The ethical exercise, of course, aims at focusing on what else we should do in addition to rules. My vision is that data protection legislation, consumer law, competition law cannot give all the answers. Something more is to be explored. And I would really welcome that even the new administration can simply be on the same track. We have a lot of homeworks in terms of joint review of existing legal instruments. I think they are essential for business purposes and institutional relationships. And we too in Europe have homeworks. We are working to ensure that let's say implementation, though implementation is not the right word, of the GDPR at member states level is consistent with this process in terms of harmonization. And I really appreciated the commitment of Christopher Graham and Elizabeth Denham to say, regardless of what the outcome will be about Brexit, in any event, GDPR will be a reality in UK. It will enter into full application by May 2018, and I'm confident that regardless of the outcome, that they will continue working in such a perspective. So perhaps you may expect that I comment in a pessimistic way, but after such a long night, let me be optimistic.
That's great. We appreciate it, Giovanni. Edith, I view the Fair Credit Reporting Act, FCRA, as one of the first pieces of legislation that actually foresaw some of the issues and problems involved with big data, including getting it wrong and assigning people scores that don't really fit their profile, which might have a real impact on their employment or credit or insurance. And of course, FICRA is one of the pillars of FTC enforcement in the privacy space. How do you see this, potential of big data to get it wrong?
Look, the question that you raise, and certainly the outcome of our election really does demonstrate the fact that we have to be very careful, that we've become enamored of data and big data and algorithms, and I know that we at the FTC have been saying this, and other DPAs have been saying this, which is we have to be careful when it comes to the conclusions that one draws from big data analytics. The FTC issued a report, a big data report, in January of this year. We cautioned that there may be circumstances in which just simply the fact that you have a huge volume of data doesn't necessarily mean that the results are more accurate, and that there may be incomplete data sets. You may be missing the views of a large segment of the population, and I certainly think that's one lesson to be drawn from what happened in the United States in this election. In addition to that, I think there is also a concern that we have that the use of big data analytics may also reinforce existing biases. And I think we have to be very cautious about that, and we need to, and certainly in our sphere, in terms of how companies use this data, we think that it's very important that companies really examine the results that they're getting from the use of big data analytics, and ensure that not only are they complying with consumer protections like the Fair Credit Reporting Act, but also that they ensure that the outcomes truly are appropriate, fair. And so I think we need to be taking a hard look at this. And I know that certainly in the US there will be a very close self-examination about what went wrong when it came to trying to evaluate consumer preferences.
Public opinion, yeah.
Public opinion.
So all three of you mentioned Privacy Shield. I know it's going to be a big theme here in the conference. I want to ask you, Giovanni, and you, Isabel, in just about 6 months, we are going to have the first annual review of Privacy Shield. How are we doing? And also maybe is Shield GDPR ready itself? Giovanni, if you want to start.
You know how DPAs have interacted and commented the Privacy Shield. We should recognize that the final outcome is much better than the initial proposal. Many improvements, particularly on the commercial side, but we were not, of course, 100% satisfied. And it's difficult to say the Privacy Shield is court-proof. And as you see from headlines, it may be subject to scrutiny soon. But the joint review exercise goes in parallel. It is not performed by DPAs exclusively, but we are expecting to be associated as the Commission, as declared in the relevant decision. Other exercises are taking place with regard to other legal instruments. As the Commission has publicly announced, a decision is to be taken now to amend decisions on contractual clauses, binding corporate rules, and other adequacy decisions included with regard to the exercise of powers by DPAs, and this would be extremely relevant. So 29 Working Party is working hard on all these dossiers, so looking to the future about GDPR, but also administering the present. So we have to consider the current legal framework, but we have to see how the Shield and any other legal instrument may work in the next future. It's a lot of work with regard to different items. I don't go now into details. And it absorbs something like 35% of the activities of the relevant subgroups. Am I positive or, optimistic here? Okay, give me a couple of minutes.
You set an optimistic tone today, Giovanni.
Yes,
Don't back off now.
On the specific issue, give me a couple of minutes to think about it.
Okay. Isabel, you want to comment on this?
Yeah, just to add that it's true that the first joint review is going to be a critical meeting, because at this meeting we will estimate if the commitments of the US government are real, effective, in reality or not. Because as Giovanni said, we have on the final text of the Shield expressed concerns on various points, in particular on the ombudsperson and on the mass collection. And in front of these concerns, the US administration has taken some commitments. So the question now is, are these commitments real, effective, proved through metrics or not? So the first joint meeting is a real day. And through this real day, we will be able, at the Working Party 29 level, to assess finally if the Shield is adequate or not. So we are preparing this meeting very seriously with all our American counterparts. And because there are various procedures to set, in particular the EU centralized body. You may not know what is the EU centralized body. It is the process, the channel through which possible complaints on public security issues related to the Shield should be conveyed from Europe to the United States. And you know that this is one of the subjects on which the American government has really innovated through the ombudsperson. So we have to set this EU centralized body for the possible complaints to be simply conveyed to the US. We also have to set the system for the commercial complaints, if they exist. So all these elements will allow us to have information to prepare the joint review.
Great. Edith, comments on this?
Yes, and let me sound a note of optimism, and cautious optimism, but optimism nonetheless. I can certainly tell you from the American perspective that the commitment to the Privacy Shield is absolutely real, sincere, and I can say this firsthand just simply from the significant effort that was undertaken in conjunction with the Department of Commerce and with our colleagues at the European Commission to negotiate what we believe is a robust framework that I think will ultimately stand the test of time. It was also conceived and negotiated as a forward-looking framework, and also we set up intentionally this annual review process to address concerns that might arise. But let me also say that the success of the Privacy Shield program does depend on collaboration. And one very significant effort on the part, certainly, of the Federal Trade Commission when it comes to enforcement is the strengthening of the ties with European DPAs in order to ensure success, to deepen that collaboration and that level of communication, which I don't think had been in place in the past when it came to safe harbor. And I think that we've made significant efforts to rectify it, and I want to really acknowledge Isabel in her work, in her both capacity as head of the Article 29 Working Party, but also as head of the CNIL in this regard. And I also know that we at the FTC look forward to continuing our engagement with other DPAs. So I believe that it's a robust framework, and I'm cautiously optimistic.
Great. Edith, Isabel, Giovanni, I think on behalf of everyone in the room here, the privacy profession and the IPP, thank you for your leadership and for your engagement with us, the privacy profession. Thank you.